All right, we're back on the Talkback Show, and indeed we do have candidate Mark Wicks for U.S. House on the phone. Thanks for calling in, Mark.
Oh, great to be back on.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. By the way, if you have a question for Mark, and I know he wants to answer some, give us a call at 721-1290. We spoke earlier on this week, Mark, a little bit about how you felt the media was treating your campaign. How have things been this past week? Did you get any more headlines?
Well, yeah, we're getting closer to the election, and I think they're starting to see a little poll movement, so they're getting a little more excited about me. But it's still hard trying to get the major papers to remember that there is a third candidate.
Now, if people don't know yet, we have an election coming up May 25th, and Mark is participating in that as a candidate for U.S. House on the Libertarian ticket. Now, Mark, tell us a little bit about your closing speech during the debate. You described yourself as a work truck. Maybe you could give us that pitch for those that missed it.
Okay, sure. Well, I see Mr. Gianforte as a luxury car. It looks really good, it runs good, but at the end of the day, it just wants to go park with other luxury cars down at the country club and be with its own type of car. And then we have Mr. Quist, who's like a little red half-ton pickup. It looks really shiny, it's bright, it looks good, it's got a kick and sound system on it. But when you pop the hood, you see there's a little six-cylinder underneath the hood, and as soon as you try and do some work with it, you pull the transmission out of it. And at some point, it did a curb check really hard, and the frame got bent, and it pulls really hard to the left all the time. Now, I'm the work truck. I'm the guy that gets things done. I have the tow chains, the jumper cables, the wrenches, everything that needs to get you going. So if you're broke down on the side of the road, who do you want to see come along? Mark Wicks, pull up in his work truck and get you there at the end of the day.
All right, let's complete the metaphor. Fill in the picture for me. What are the chains? What are the get to work sort of equipment that you're going to bring to the table when it comes to running, your seat in the legislature?
Well, one of the things that's really I studied technology education, which is the study of manufacturing, energy, communication, and transportation. Of course, that has a lot to do with what we're doing out in Washington. So I have almost a degree in it. I didn't do my student teaching, but have all the classes in that. That's something I bring to it. I've ranched. I know that business. I've worked in the oil field, so I've been around the energy industry. I just have a very wide base of knowledge to draw from. And I've lived out here my entire life, and I've ran businesses. I've just got an incredible broad base of information to draw off of.
When it comes to the campaign, obviously there's a lot of back and forth between Greg and between Rob. Do any arrows fly at you, or do you kind of feel like, or do you want more?
Well, I'm really happy I'm not getting arrows thrown at me, and that's purposely by them. They're I'm sure their campaign managers would slap them on the back of the head if they mentioned my name in public.
Their best tactic is just to pretend like you don't exist, you think?
Absolutely, and that's why they wouldn't get in any debates with me. We had 2 previous debates that we tried to schedule, and they backed out on both of them, and finally basically got trapped into the one that I did do, and then if you saw the debate, I did very well in it, and they didn't do so well.
Backtrack just a little bit. How did they get trapped?
Well, they were invited without me. They had said they would do the debate, and we had to fight our way in, and we finally were accepted 24 hours before the debate.
Like literally, were there like journalists knocked down in the hallways on the way into the debate? I mean, how did you fight your way in?
It took some lawyers and a lot of grassroots help, but when it came down to it, threats from to go to the Federal Election Commission and some lawyers, that knocked some doors open.
All right. Let's shift to talking specifically about what you would do on some major policy issues. Because
Sure.
I think that's really what we should be talking about with all the candidates, not necessarily tax liens and whether or not they were born in Montana.
Well, that's true. You're right. Because everybody has problems in their past. Life doesn't go perfectly for everybody, and and actually, hopefully, it builds character when you have a few little kicks to the teeth.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. There are certain things that show character as well. I'm not saying it's unimportant whether or not someone pays their taxes, but
no, no. We hope that they pay their taxes when we can, and it sounds like there's a little bit more to it than just not paying taxes. And I'm not gonna rag on that. Greg does a very good job at that. I'm not going to go into it.
Well, let's focus on talking about health care. There is the American Health Care Act that looks poised to go to the Senate. The House has already passed it. Is that something that you think that you would have passed if you had been in office?
No. I have always said to repeal it. I don't think that the federal government even has the constitutional right to be there. But it should be left to the states to try and find what works for the people in their respective states, and not trying to make a one-size-fits-all solution. And I don't even feel like they're serious about health care if they aren't trying to get the cost lowered to start with. If we could make a perfect bill that was going to work today and fund itself, and it worked, in a few years it would already be back in the same situation where it'd be bankrupt because we haven't controlled the costs.
Now let me phrase it a little bit different way, because the legislature is complicated, and the votes for each individual member are more difficult than the way I'm going to lay it out here. But I just want to get your perspective. In a situation where you had to choose between the current system and the American Health Care Act, i.e. there wasn't just a simple repeal option because you wouldn't be able to get the votes for it, would you choose the American Health Care Act over the Affordable Care Act?
Well, if I was forced to, yes, just because the Affordable Care Act was imploding on itself, and it's, we could have let it play out, or they could have let it play out till it absolutely blew up. But nobody would be a winner there, and that's not how I want to. I don't want to hurt people to make a point. That would never be something I would want to do, and unfortunately, there's people in Washington that would rather do that.
Well, let's take a call. I know people want to hear from you. Give me 5 seconds to figure this out real quick. Okay, I got to get two lines on one line. Okay, Marilyn, you're on the air.
Good morning. So America has the blood of 61 million babies on its hands, and I would like to know how you feel about that. Do you think abortion should be abolished, and what do you think about Planned Parenthood getting $500,000 every year from taxpayers, being that they're a private group?
All right, thanks for your call, Marilyn.
Right.
Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, this has been. I've had to write a position paper on this, and honestly, it's been the hardest thing I've had to do in this campaign, because as a father of four, of course, I love my children. It's hard to imagine anybody not loving their children. Right now, Roe versus Wade is the law of the land. I think if it's overturned, it will go back to the states, and then the states will have to decide what they want to do. But as a libertarian, I have to decide that you have to make your own decisions. And, even though I think I don't like abortion, and I have some ideas on how to make it happen less, or have it happen less. And so I hope you go to my Facebook page, read that paper. I think you'll feel a lot better about my position when you do. But I don't like light-term abortions. I'm okay with the morning after pill. I start getting pretty squeamish after that. But so I have a position that the pro-life doesn't really jump on board, and the pro-choice don't particularly like. I'm in the middle. Maybe that's where more people are. And as far as Planned Parenthood, I think they have a corporate culture that I just don't like. and I don't think they need to be getting our funding. I think there's other organizations that could probably do it, do what they're doing just as well without that corporate culture involved.
All right. Well, hey, we got to go to another break. Mark, thanks so much for your candor. If you have a question for Mark, give us a call. It's 721-1290. We'll get you on the line like we did with Marilyn. Again, the phone number is 721-1290 to speak with Mark Wicks, who's running for U.S. House here in Montana. The Talkback Show. I am here in studio. Mark is not. He's apparently watching traffic out. Where exactly are you again, Mark? You're in Kalispell?
Kalispell, yep. I'm at the Comfort Inn or someplace here. It's just right here on Main and 93.
All right. Now, you weren't delivering the mail in Kalispell. You were out there for something else, I assume.
Right. I'm out here for the Liberty Bash that's at the Firebrand Hotel tonight. That should be really neat if you want to meet a very famous libertarian author. Matthew Kibbe's going to be there talking about his book. And then tomorrow we're having a work truck contest at the Firebrand in the parking lot. So if you want to bring down your work truck, your fixed-up truck, your pink truck, and the ugliest truck, we're going to have some prizes for all that. Or come down your motorcycle, your restored car. Show me your Americana. It's just going to be fun.
All right. Well, hey, we got some Americana of our own. We got Myrna on the line to ask you a question. Myrna, thanks so much for calling in. You're on the air with Mark Wicks.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. What have you got for me this morning?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Myrna.
Yes.
Well, I watched the debate, and I really want to vote for you, but I'm very much against drugs, including marijuana. I think it's the scourge of the nation. And I was kind of disappointed in your answer because you said you were okay with it, with marijuana or, I guess, general drugs. And the only one that defended a drug-free America was Greg. So
right.
I'm wanting you to reassure me that you're not really okay with drugs. And
well, I've never used drugs in my life, and I really think it's silly to use them. But here's the thing, and I'm not for legalizing any hard drugs like opiates or meth or anything like that. And I break from the party line on that, and I catch trouble for that. But the thing about marijuana is everybody that wants it has it. It's basically legal already.
No, it isn't.
And, you know, it's
federally
if everybody that wants it has it, what are we really doing? So
putting a nation to sleep?
Well, that could be. You know, and I've had so many people argue with or tell me that, you know, compared to alcohol, what a scourge alcohol is on our society. And
that is
well,
legal.
You know, you're probably right there. And we tried prohibition of that, and it didn't work. And we've tried prohibition of marijuana, and it hasn't worked. I'm not one to keep doing things over and over and over that don't work. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Thanks for your call, Myrna. We're going to go to another caller. This is Gregan. Gregan, you're on the air.
Good morning, John. On my computer, I was reading the Missoulian as of March 27, and it has something. The headline is "Ban on Sanctuary Cities Would Cost Montana Cities Money," opponents say. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that when are we going to become adults and realize that doing dumb things twice just doesn't make it right? You know?
Okay, Gregan. I'm going to shift that over back to you, Mark, but I'm going to ask a little bit more of a direct question. When it comes to sanctuary cities, where do you stand? Libertarians have been at times, kind of open borders folks. Sometimes they're closed borders folks. Give me a sense of where you sit on that.
Okay, again, I break with my party on that one. I am a closed border person. I don't think sanctuary cities are a good idea. If I'm going to pick on Mexico because that's what everybody thinks about. If they were at the same economic level as we are, we could have an open border. and it would be fine because people would mostly stay where they're at. They'd move back and forth a little bit for work, much like Canada is at the same level of us. If we ripped that fence out tomorrow, we wouldn't see a huge influx of Canadians. They wouldn't see a big influx of Americans because we're fairly equal. But when you're not equal, it leads to the problems we have where people are coming up here just, some of them work hard, and that's great. But there's others that just come up here to try and get on our systems and use it. And some of these people are really not people that we want in the country. And those are the people that when they are arrested and they're in a sanctuary city, they need to be turned over to ICE and sent home before they do any more damage. And that's not happening right now.
We have a question from Elena. She wants to know where you stand on the refugee resettlement program. She also wants to know where you stand on sanctuary cities, but you kind of already responded to that part of it.
Right. The refugee resettlement, I haven't got into it very much. I would hope that these people that once their country's origin, it calms down, that they're able to go home. But more importantly, if they're going to be here, do they want to be Americans? If they don't want to be Americans, then maybe they should be someplace else, because we don't have room for hyphenated Americans in America. They need to be Americans and want to be Americans.
There is a states' rights argument for sanctuary cities. Basically, that the state should be able to decide that federal law shouldn't overwhelm them. What do you think about the moves out of the current administration to make it illegal or to withdraw federal funds for areas that have sanctuary city laws?
Well, they can't go against federal law. That's, there's certain things that are reserved for the government, immigration being one of them. And if they're breaking immigration law, then, there needs to be some consequences. I don't get to pick which federal laws I get to break, and I don't think a mayor or a city council should be allowed to do that either. I mean, who wouldn't want to quit paying their taxes if they didn't want to? We've got to follow the rules we have. Part of what I want to do is make sure there's fewer rules that we actually have to abide by. I think we have way too many. But I'm always would like to get government down to its lowest level, and I think that works the best. And
I think you mean lowest level as in smaller, not necessarily less moral, which seems to be the way we're headed.
I would like, if we could make all our education decisions at the local level, that would be great. I mean, it's just people work together at smaller levels. Communities can do more together when they're not being hit over the head with federal mandates.
All right, we got to go to another break. When we get back, we got Joel on the line to ask you another question. We'll be back in just a second with Mark Wicks. If you have a question, get in the queue. 721-1290 is the number. That's 721-1290. All right. We are back on the Talkback Show. We have full lines, so congratulations to Mr. Wicks. You are now a Talkback rock star with all lines full. And we're going to go ahead and just jump right back into taking some of those calls. So let's go to Joel. Joel, you are on the air. Thanks for calling in, sir.
Yes. Thank you.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, yes. Is it Mark?
It's Mark Wicks.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Mark, I have a question. Do you think that health insurance companies should pay for abortion?
Oh, boy. I really haven't gave any thought at that level. You're the first person that's ever asked me that. I would say if you're in a faith-based system, I would say no, because that would go against everybody's beliefs in the entire system. Past that, I would have to think on it more. But there are some organizations that I would say that because of religious beliefs that it shouldn't be paid for.
All right. I'm going to read a quick comment from our Facebook page. It's one that will concern you, Mark. This is from Phil. He says, perhaps I've missed the instructions, but after seeking info on the Internet, I still cannot get clear information as to how and when I will receive my mail-in ballot for the upcoming special election. I don't think I'm alone in this. As a public service, could you explain daily, if necessary, how the election process will work this time? Well, basically, Phil, it is a polling place election. So if you go to your regular polling place and vote normally, then you'll do that. If you are in Missoula, some of the polling places have been shifted around, and you'll probably get a letter in the mail telling you where your new place is. As far as the ballots, you're not going to get a mail-in ballot unless you've already signed up to do so. They did not pass that mail-in ballot-only bill in the legislature this session. So if you did sign up for a mail-in ballot, you should have received it probably the first week or two of this month. I got mine around there. So if you haven't got it, and we're expecting to check with your elections office, okay? Anything you want to add to that, Mark, or should we go to questions?
No, actually, I would like to add to that. I would like to point out that about half of Montana has opted out of voting, has given up, and if you're just tired of the Republicans and Democrats and fighting, you've got a choice. You can come out and vote for me and actually make a difference, and you can register right up to Election Day to vote. So go in and vote. Your vote will be counted.
All right, let's go to Emmett. Emmett, you are on the air.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. Well, back to the abortion question. Okay, I know you're kind of middle of the road, and, I've always disagreed with this idea that, well, I don't personally like abortion, but I want to uphold the law, even if it's a bad law. If it's a bad law, it should be repealed. But have you ever heard of the videos made by the Center for Medical Progress? They're undercover videos with Planned Parenthood admitting that they sell baby body parts and the hearts and lungs, and this newest one admitting they should keep certain nurses out of the room because the baby that's dead looks too much like a baby, and we don't want to let people know this really is a baby. We want to keep that hush-hush. This has actually been documented, and the person that has made this is going to prison for a very long time. When you see these videos by American Medical Progress, whatever it's called, Citizens for Medical Progress, or whatever that is, just Google that up. What?
Yeah. Go ahead. Get your question out.
If you see those, if you can Google those up on the Internet, Planned Parenthood undercover videos, it might change your mind that this isn't just a choice that should be left. This is an actual baby. They admit it, and the videos weren't doctored. So what's your take on that?
Thanks for your call, Emmett.
All right.
I have heard about those videos. I haven't watched them because I feel like I'm aware enough of what's going on, and that's why I have a real problem with the Planned Parenthood corporate culture. I do not like the idea of abortions out 3-4 months along or later. I just think that's wrong. And
can I ask can I ask you a question along that line? As a libertarian, obviously liberty is a main focus for you. But in the way our system of government is lined out, under kind of the Lockean idea of life, liberty, and I guess you could say the Jeffersonian pursuit of happiness or property, whatever you want to put in that category, there is a point where liberty is subservient to life. And
I would agree.
We as a culture prioritize law to protect life. And I guess the question I think a lot of people are having is, when do you choose to put liberty at equal or above life when it comes to the life of an infant? And at what point in development do you make that decision to say, okay, now we're going to start protecting you as life, whereas the day before or the month before we weren't?
Right. That's a question that isn't going to be solved anytime soon. For me, as when I look at the pictures, when it starts looking like a baby, it's a baby. And that's why I like the morning after pill, when you're still talking, maybe sometimes the egg isn't even fertilized yet. And I would like to work on some solutions to give mothers the option where they don't have to have an abortion.
Yeah, you had brought that up before. What are some of your options there? Because you mentioned that earlier that you had some ideas on your website, but since we don't have access necessarily.
I found out that an adoption costs $40,000 to $60,000. That's crazy. No wonder it's hard to get. I mean, what young family can afford $40,000 to adopt a baby? So let's try and streamline it a little bit, get it down to where it's easier for people to adopt, and give the mothers the option. I mean, that should be the one thing the lawyers are involved in. That should be a wonderful thing. Everything else lawyers do, somebody's usually getting hurt. But one mother giving up a baby for a better life should be a good thing, and it shouldn't be financially ruinous to the family adopting them. So let's get that changed. Let's have education in school at puberty to explain how our bodies work. We're the most complicated organism in the universe that we know of, and we come without an instruction manual. So just saying don't do it isn't enough. Young ladies need to know how their bodies work so they don't get accidentally pregnant. I mean, and then just more emphasis on the family. That's nothing the government can do, but that's us. We need to sit down with our kids and know what they're doing and talk to them. And, I think having at least one family sit down dinner, one family night a week is a good place to start.
All right. Well, let's go to another quick break. When we get back, it looks like we have Dave and then Eric in the queue. Not much time left to get your questions in if you're interested in calling and talking with Mark Wicks. The phone number is 721-1290. We'll be back in just a minute. All right, back on the Talkback Show. Less than 15 minutes left in the program. We're going to try to get as many questions as we can to Mark Wicks, our guest, Libertarian candidate for U.S. House. First up, we've got Dave. There we go. Dave, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning. I was wondering about foreign policy. What do you feel about North Korea, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan? I'm curious to know.
Oh, boy, I have 15 minutes left. But I'm just going to touch on North Korea, and because that guy's been a thorn in our side for quite a while, and he's making a lot of noise that he's going to drop a nuke on us, but what I've seen in the past has bothered me. When we go to war, we sit there and we wipe out all their infrastructure. We destroy the tanks and all that, and then we finally get to the guy that's causing all the problem, which I think is a backwards approach to this. Probably 90% of the Korean soldiers are been forced into the army or had to go in because they didn't want to starve. I don't think it's really moral to go kill all those young men and women to pay for what their leader's doing. If we do anything, I hope they just take the head off the snake and leave those poor kids so they can go home and be with their families. And hopefully we can get North Korea maybe reunited and get our troops home for after 60 years. I would like to see other countries in the region take more of a lead on this, because I think North Koreans might react better to, say, Vietnamese or Cambodian or Chinese help than American help. They've just heard we're the devil for the last 60 years. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I would like to get us out as much as we can out of foreign countries, and I realize it's a global economy, and we do have to keep an eye on things just to keep a little peace in the world, but I think other countries can step up and do a little more than they have.
All right, I'm going to read a question from Matt on Facebook. He says, if Mark doesn't believe that states can preempt or decide not to enforce certain federal laws, what does he think about the sheriff in Ravalli County that decided not to enforce a federal mandate? And can he explain how the legality of marijuana at the state versus federal level should be handled? Also, what are your thoughts on federal lands transfer?
Okay. I don't know anything about what's going on with the Ravalli County Sheriff.
It's a little bit older. Yeah, it's an older story. But if you don't know, we'll just go on to the next one. What about federal lands transfer? What are your thoughts?
Okay. Well, and I get asked that every interview. And first, we have to figure out, does the state even want the land? I don't see us ever. We're not going to get rid of Yellowstone, the Bob Marshall Wilderness. They're not going into private hands. And anybody that's screaming that is just trying to get your attention and get your money. That's just a lie. That's not going to happen. Nobody's going to stand for it. I think we do have to look at how we manage our land. There's some stuff in eastern Montana that maybe could be put into private hands. I'm thinking like around Lake Elwell. Could we get 40 acres from the Bureau of Rec to put some cabin sites in, build some tax base in Liberty County? Can we do the same at Fresno and Fort Peck? I think we need to look at a place-by-place piece of property, not a blanket.
But you're not against. So what I hear you saying is you're not against federal land transfer. You're for it if the situation fits.
If it fits, yes. And if we were ever to transfer any, there needs to be a conservation easement on it that Americans and Montanans would be able to access that land for recreation forever. So if there's a section of land in the middle of eastern Montana that they decide, well, let's sell it off to one of the farmers there, that we would still be able to go hunt it just like we do today.
Okay. Well, let's get another caller in. Looks like this is Eric. Eric, you're on the air.
Hi. Two brief comments. The war on drugs has nothing to do with drugs. It's a platform of oppression. Anyway, there's that comment. And, John, there is no hostility between liberty and life. They should not be pitted one against the other. When our founders discussed liberty, they meant our freedom to exercise God-given rights. Doing evil is not a right. Are you saying that God sanctions evil? And the Bible says the Bible says the same thing when it says, "Don't use your liberty as a cloak of maliciousness." Now, I think a better word to use would be libertine when it comes to life.
Thanks for your call, Eric.
Yep, bye.
All right. Any response to that, Mark?
Oh, one thing I've been pointed out when people start talking about this subject is free will. And people have been given free will, and we have to, I guess, sanction their free will to make their choices. Of course, sometimes we try and help them if we can, but we try and do what we can where we can.
All right. Well, hey, we got another quick break. We have to, and we can go to this break. When we get back, we just have a few minutes left, probably one or two calls left if you want to try to get in. 721-1290 is the number if you'd like to talk with candidate Mark Wicks. All right, we're back on the Talkback Show. Just a few minutes left, taking your calls at KGVO here. We got 721-1290 ready to roll. We got two lines open. We got a call from Marilyn. I think it's probably the same Marilyn. How are you doing?
Hi. So, free will. Murder. So, really, you believe that murder is free will? And, I think we need to go back to calling this abortion evil murder.
Okay, Marilyn. Thanks for your call. I assume, Mark, that you don't see it as murder.
Well, I'm not going to wade into that one.
All right. Well, let's change topics a little bit since you're getting hounded by these abortion questions today.
Yeah,
you got a position that's doesn't fit comfortably with a lot of people, and every position doesn't fit comfortably with a lot of people.
No, and either way, if you're pro-life or pro-choice, it's the same thing. It doesn't fit certain people, and it's definitely the hardest thing. And I wrestle with it the hardest of any position I've had to come up with, and like I said, if it were up to me, I would like to try and change things enough to where there was never the need for the abortion, that the clinics would just go out of business for lack of customers. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
That'd be awesome. question for you. Let's talk about some other policies and where you stand on them.
Sure.
Would you be in support of a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution?
I think it would be a good idea. It's going to be pretty hard to get through, but they're working on an Article 5 convention. But how that's going to work is really, really questionable. But I would definitely would like to work towards getting a balanced budget amendment.
Many Montana legislators, especially on the left, have championed and opposed the Citizens United decision, wanting to see that overturned. Others say that it's a free speech issue and that it should remain. What is your take on that?
Well, I think we do need to get some of the money out of politics that we have. There's some very rich people that have grabbed a lot of control, and right now the Supreme Court has said that, well, we can't control them, and this upsets the Libertarians to no end. And I said, well, why don't we just put a tax on, set a spending cap? Anything over that spending cap, they got to pay a tax on, a heavy tax. And that'll slow down the money coming in. And I don't think anybody in Montana is really excited that there's how much money is being spent in this race and how they're being bombarded with ads. And they're pretty sick of it. I think they'd like to see, maybe $1 million campaign. You say what you need to say and get it done.
Let's talk a little bit about, you spoke about federal lands transfer. What about American territories overseas? There's a lot of concern when it comes to Libertarian candidates that there's an isolationist bent to it, and that we might withdraw, whether that be from military bases overseas or from embassies overseas. Give me your view on international relations when it comes to U.S.
Well, I think we definitely need to get some troops home. We've got, I don't remember the count, we've got troops in over 100 nations. Embassies are part of our federal government, and that's good. They protect our citizens in the countries they're in. They need to stay there. But, and like we have some territories like Guam and the Mariana Islands, and of course we need to keep a presence there. That's part of the U.S.
All right. We have just about 3 minutes left, and I just want to clear everything out and let you go. Talk about whatever you want. And tell us, some of the reasons we should vote for you, some of the issues maybe we haven't talked about yet that you have a strong position on.
Okay, well, I am probably the most pro-gun person that's ever came down the road. I worked in the gun industry for over 20 years. I'm a shooter, a reloader, a hunter, collector. I can't get a rating from the NRA because they're basically too lazy to do it, even though I begged them and my supporters begged them. But anyway, so I'm very pro-Second Amendment. What I want to tell voters, because they're really worried that, when I get out to Washington, whether I'll have any support or not. And being a Libertarian and the only Libertarian in Congress gives me an interesting position because I am not in either party. And any time they get me to support a bill that they're pushing, it has bipartisan support. So they have a sound bite. The other thing is, every time they have a news conference and they ask for the Republican position, the Democratic position, and then they're going to come to me, the Libertarian, and ask for my position, which is the Montana position. So for the first time, Montana is going to have a voice in the House of Representatives. There's 435 representatives, and Montana has one. And we're just overlooked all the time. So it gives, I call myself like the power pill of politics. In those video games, you pick the little pill and it gives you more power. Well, that's kind of how electing me is. It gives Montana more power than we've ever had before. So that's pretty neat. And, plus Montana 100 years ago sent the first woman to Congress, Jeanette Rankin. Now, exactly 100 years later, they have the chance to send a Libertarian and break another glass ceiling. And so that's really interesting. It would be a pretty neat precedent to set.
We have about a minute left. And I guess I wanted to get one more piece of information from you. How would you deal with the Trump administration, and maybe talk a little bit about the investigations going on concerning Russia? What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's more smoke there than fire. But, of course, we have to make sure that we keep our executive branch in line, and I think we failed, 20 years ago when we should have put our foot down, and every administration has taken their power to a new limit. So we have to get them back in control. We need to get the judicial branch back under control, and the legislative actually has to start doing their job.
All right. Hey, Mark, I got 10 seconds left, all right?
Yep.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you. Vote for Mark Wicks.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Bye.